Kimberly had worked hard for 7 years, finally awaiting the promotion assessment for chief reporter at the television station. However, the station suddenly parachuted in the impeccably credentialed Olivia. The station director announced, "Whoever secures an exclusive interview with the top-tier heir Sebastian first will get the position." Kimberly smiled immediately. Sebastian was her boyfriend, who doted on her endlessly. This interview would be a breeze for her, but later. When the list was announced, Sebastian had ultimately chosen to give the exclusive interview to Olivia. She froze on the spot, unable to believe it. Rushing to the restaurant he frequented, she wanted to ask him face to face for an explanation, yet through the glass, she saw him slightly bowing his head, attentively and tenderly peeling shrimp for Olivia. At that moment, Kimberly felt as if struck by lightning. She distinctly remembered that exactly a year ago, in this very restaurant, she had playfully asked him to peel shrimp for her. He had chuckled helplessly, kissed her fingertips, and said, "Sweetheart, I'm allergic to shrimp, can't peel them. Do it yourself." Alright, hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. Kimberly stood frozen, staring blankly at the scene unfolding in the restaurant, feeling as though invisible ice nails had pierced through her entire body, rendering her immobile. Everyone says Sebastian is famously the untouchable flower of their circle, aloof, abstinent, with an aura so intimidating it once made a female business partner cry. Only in front of her, his girlfriend, does he shed that icy demeanor to reveal rare tenderness. But now, for the first time, she saw an even gentler expression on his face. Yet it wasn't directed at her. She felt as if the entire world was crumbling before her eyes. It wasn't until Olivia got up and headed to the restroom that Kimberly seemed to finally regain control of her body. She walked over step by step, her footsteps unsteady, as if treading on clouds or stepping on broken glass. "Sebastian," her voice was terribly dry, trembling uncontrollably. Sebastian looked up at the sound, visibly startled to see her. A barely perceptible flicker of panic flashed through his eyes, but was quickly replaced by his usual composure. "Kimberly, what brings you here? What's your relationship with Olivia?" She stared at him intently, each word seeming to be forced through clenched teeth. Sebastian remained silent for a few seconds, set down his gloves, and leisurely wiped his hands with a tissue. He avoided her gaze, his voice low. "Kimberly, I mentioned my past relationships to you before. Do you remember?" Kimberly trembled all over. Of course she remembered. They had just started dating when she noticed how exceptionally well he knew how to pamper a girl. Unable to resist, she asked if he had been in many relationships before. At that moment, he pulled her into his arms and answered truthfully, "Not many, just pursued one. It was back in high school. I was far less composed than I am now. It was my first crush, and I poured all my energy into chasing her, studying her preferences in every way. That's how I learned so much." He spoke with an air of detachment, as if recounting someone else's story. "In the end, it didn't work out, not because she wasn't willing, but because she went abroad for her dreams. I had to stay to inherit the family business, and we just missed each other." His expression was so calm then that Kimberly assumed he had long moved on. After all, so many years had passed, and the other person had never even been officially with him. After all, she was the one who had spent 5 years by his side day and night. At a business banquet 5 years ago, she met Sebastian for the first time. Back then, he was already a business tycoon who dominated the scene, while she was just a rookie journalist. He stood at the center of the crowd, yet seemed to radiate his own aura, making it impossible to look away. To her surprise, after the dinner party, he took the initiative to ask for her contact information and began pursuing her. Someone as lofty as him would drive several blocks on a cold winter night just to buy her favorite dessert, would silently wait downstairs when she worked late into the night, would drop all his work and stay by her side without leaving when she fell ill. She once asked him why he chose her, and he simply kissed her forehead gently and said, "Because you're you." Looking back now, perhaps it was only because she happened to appear during his time of solitude. "That person, is that Olivia?" Her voice trembled violently. Sebastian gave a soft amham. "Then what do you feel for her now?" she heard herself ask with shaking voice. Sebastian remained silent for a moment before answering in a low voice, "Kimberly, I don't want to lie to you. The moment I saw her, my heart still became unsettled. But I'm not sure if it's attraction, or just an obsession with the past." He looked at her with complex emotions in his eyes. "I never thought about breaking up with you. But I can't sort out my feelings right now. Give me a month, okay? Let me figure things out clearly." Kimberly felt as if an invisible hand had clenched her heart, the pain so intense she could barely breathe. Not only had he personally handed away her promotion opportunity, but now he was saying such things to her. For these past 5 years, he had been so good to her. Everyone who has seen them together says Sebastian loves her to the bone. But why? Olivia only had to appear once. And everything changed. If your heart wasn't cleared out, why did you come to provoke her in the first place? She was just about to speak when Olivia returned from the restroom. Upon seeing Kimberly, she visibly froze for a moment before offering a polite smile. Kimberly, what brings you here? Before Kimberly could respond, Sebastian stood up and introduced naturally. Olivia, this is Kimberly, my girlfriend. Olivia was momentarily stunned, then laughed. I've long heard Sebastian has a girlfriend he dotes on, but I never imagined it would be Kimberly, what a delightful coincidence. She then turned to Kimberly, speaking sincerely. Kimberly, please don't misunderstand, Sebastian and I are just old friends catching up. Since you're here too, why not join us for dinner? Kimberly could only sit down like a puppet being pulled by strings, yet tasted nothing of the meal throughout. She watched helplessly as Sebastian's attention almost entirely focused on Olivia, carefully serving her dishes, responding to every topic she raised, with a level of attentiveness that even surpassed his kindness toward her. Each scene was like a knife, stabbing straight into her heart. Unable to bear it any longer, she was about to stand up and leave when suddenly, an unexpected incident occurred. A screeching brake sound came from outside the window as an out-of-control car crashed through the guardrail. Hurtling straight toward the floor-to-ceiling window where they were, watch out, Sebastian suddenly turned pale and sprang to his feet. In the blink of an eye, Kimberly saw him instinctively, without hesitation, leap over her, who was sitting right beside him, and tightly shield Olivia, who was sitting diagonally across, in his arms before lunging to the side. Bang, crash. The deafening sound of a massive impact and shattering glass filled the air. Kimberly had no time to react, only feeling a tremendous force strike her as shards of glass flew like knives, slicing through her skin. Then, the entire shattered window frame came crashing down onto her back and head. Excruciating pain instantly swallowed all her consciousness. The last image before plunging into darkness was Sebastian holding Olivia tightly, his back turned to shield her completely. She woke again in a hospital room thick with the smell of disinfectant. Every inch of her body ached as if disassembled and reassembled, especially her head and back. With difficulty, she rolled her eyes. The room was empty, just her alone. The nurse came in to change the dressing and, seeing her awake, sighed in relief. Kimberly, you're awake. You're quite badly hurt, concussion, multiple glass cuts on your back, and a minor bone fracture. You'll need plenty of rest. You should notify your family to come take care of you. Kimberly looked at the empty hospital room and said softly, I don't have any family. The nurse sighed and left, hesitating as if wanting to say more. The door wasn't fully closed, and the faint sound of nurses chatting in the hallway drifted in. Ah, how different fate treats people. That Miss Jiang in the VIP ward just had a tiny cut on her hand. Mr. Sebastian was so nervous he guarded her personally, wouldn't rest even after the doctor said it was nothing. Then look at this Kimberly. Injured so badly she nearly didn't wake up. A full day and night has passed without a single family member coming to visit. The words were like poison-tipped needles, piercing deep into Kimberly's already riddled heart. I see. So he hadn't come because he was accompanying Olivia, whom he'd protected so well she only got a tiny cut. Suddenly she began laughing softly, but as she laughed, tears surged forth uncontrollably, soaking her pillow. A month, to let him sort out his feelings. How ridiculous. He didn't need a month at all, just a few hours. An instinctive choice at a life-or-death moment had already made it crystal clear to her who truly occupied his heart. Fine. Since he had never let go of Olivia, she would step aside for him. She would set him free, allowing him to reunite with the unresolved love of his youth and rekindle their past romance. She took a deep breath, wiped away her tears, and with her still functioning right hand, reached for her phone to call her supervisor at the station. Sir, I request to be transferred to work as a war correspondent. On the other end of the line, her supervisor was shocked. Kimberly, are you out of your mind? Is this because of the recent promotion? Don't act impulsively. Do you have any idea how dangerous it is there? Bullets don't discriminate. I'm not acting impulsively. Kimberly's voice was unusually calm. Being a war correspondent is one of the highest aspirations for any journalist. Walking through gunfire to report the most authentic frontline stories was my original intention when I entered this profession. Before, there were things holding me back, so I kept this dream buried in my heart. Now, there's nothing left. Kimberly, are you really sure about this? I'm sure. The supervisor remained silent for a long time before finally letting out a heavy sigh. If that's the case, I approve. You can leave once you've processed your visa and completed the necessary procedures. As for this period, there's no need to come back to the station. Thank you, sir. The phone call had just ended when the hospital room door was pushed open. Sebastian walked in, his face carrying a trace of haste and barely noticeable exhaustion. He approached the bedside, his brow slightly furrowed. "Who are you talking to just now?" "The station's leadership, reporting work matters." Kimberly lowered her eyelashes, unwilling to meet his gaze. Sebastian looked at her indifferent expression, pursed his lips, and sat down beside her. "Kimberly, about yesterday, I'm sorry, the situation was too urgent. I just instinctively protected the one closest to me." Kimberly's heart felt like it had been brutally stabbed again. The one closest to him. She was clearly closer to him. He was sitting between her and Olivia. She was right by his side. Yet what he chose to protect was Olivia, whom he had to deliberately reach past her to touch. She said nothing, merely closing her eyes and locking all the pain and despair tightly beneath her eyelids. In the following days, Sebastian stayed by her bedside in the hospital room, but his mind was always elsewhere, frequently checking his phone, and whenever he received updates from his assistant about Olivia's condition, his tone would unconsciously grow tense and concerned. Kimberly couldn't bear it anymore and said hoarsely, "Go take care of Miss Jiang, I have nurses here." Sebastian shook his head, his tone insistent. "She's just a bit shaken up with minor injuries. You're seriously hurt, I'm staying to care for you." Kimberly only wanted to laugh until tears came. His body was here, but his heart, it had long flown to Olivia's hospital room. What's the point of forcing it to stay like this? On the day of discharge, at the hospital entrance, Kimberly happened to run into Olivia, who was also being discharged. Olivia warmly approached, first asking concernedly about Kimberly's injuries, then took out 2 exquisite invitations from her bag, handing them separately to Sebastian and Kimberly. "The station is hosting a promotion celebration banquet for me tomorrow evening. Sebastian, Kimberly, you must come and grace us with your presence." Kimberly didn't answer. Olivia's smile instantly turned somewhat aggrieved. "Kimberly, are you still mad at me, blaming me for taking your interview opportunity? I really didn't know you and Sebastian had that kind of relationship. If I'd known earlier, I would never have taken this assignment, and I truly never expected that Sebastian would choose to accept my interview. Indeed, who could have imagined it? Between his official girlfriend and someone else, he chose someone else." Kimberly felt as if a blunt instrument was repeatedly pounding her chest, the pain almost numbing. Just as she was about to speak, Sebastian naturally took the invitation and gave Olivia a reassuring glance. "This has nothing to do with you. Don't overthink it. Kimberly isn't that petty. Don't worry, we'll go." To spare Olivia from embarrassment, he had already made the decision for her. Kimberly felt a sharp pain in her heart. Yet she said nothing. In the following days, she watched helplessly as Sebastian meticulously prepared for Olivia's victory celebration banquet. He stood before the full-length mirror in the dressing room, trying on bespoke suits one after another, paying meticulous attention to every detail from cufflinks to tie pairings. The solemnity with which he approached it made it seem less like an ordinary party and more like he was preparing to receive the highest of honors. He even brought over a dozen sets of dazzling jewelry, spreading them across the entire bed, asking Kimberly to help him choose. At first she thought it was for her, but she never liked these gaudy things to begin with. Just as she was about to refuse, she heard him say, "Which set do you think Olivia would like?" In an instant, Kimberly felt all the blood in her body run cold. So, even when giving gifts, he had to go through such pains. Terrified she might not like it, her heart ached. But she said nothing. Silently, she helped him choose, then secretly applied for a visa behind his back that very day. On the night of the victory banquet, Sebastian attended with Kimberly. Olivia, as the star of the evening, shone brilliantly as she mingled among the guests. Upon seeing them, she approached gracefully to greet them, exchanged a few pleasantries, and then excused herself to attend to others, leaving them to their own devices. Sebastian remained by Kimberly's side. Yet his attention and gaze were persistently drawn to that graceful figure not far away. Each time he saw Olivia laughing and chatting with unfamiliar men, his grip on the wine glass would tighten abruptly, his knuckles turning white, and he would drain the contents of his glass one after another. Kimberly watched silently, the barren land in her heart now reduced to nothing but icy numbness. 5 years had passed, yet she'd never seen Sebastian so out of control, so visibly affected by a woman. Suddenly, Sebastian slammed his glass heavily onto the waiter's tray with a sharp clink, then strode purposefully in one direction. Kimberly instinctively followed his path with her gaze, only to see Olivia apparently drunk, being half supported, half dragged by an unfamiliar man toward the terrace outside the banquet hall. Her heart tightened, and she followed after them. Under the dim terrace lights, Sebastian grabbed the man by his collar and delivered a fierce punch. The movement was vicious, completely devoid of his usual calm composure. "Damn it, how dare you touch her!" Like a beast whose reverse scales had been provoked, he pinned the man to the ground, raining down punches with terrifying force behind each blow. Sebastian, stop, Sebastian, I'm fine, he really didn't do anything to me. Olivia seemed jolted awake by fear, crying as she rushed to pull him away. Sebastian finally stopped, panting heavily. He flung the blooded and bruised man aside. Then took out his phone to call his assistant, his voice icy and terrifying. Get to the terrace now, throw this man out, find out which family he belongs to. I never want to see him in City Z again. Only after his assistant dragged away the wailing man did Sebastian suddenly turn around, anxiously grasping Olivia's shoulders as he checked her over. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Did he touch you? Olivia, still shaken, threw herself into his arms, her voice trembling. I'm fine. I just thought it'd be livelier with more people, so I invited friends who brought their friends. I never expected to run into someone like that. Sebastian, thank goodness you came in time. Sebastian held her tightly in return, his voice softer and more fearful than ever before. Don't worry, as long as I'm here, no one will ever hurt you. With that, he suddenly swept Olivia up into a bridal carry, saying gently, you've had too much to drink, let me take you to the lounge to sober up. Turning around, she came face to face with a pale-faced Kimberly standing at the terrace entrance. Sebastian's expression flickered with unease as he opened his mouth to explain. Kimberly, no need to explain. Kimberly interrupted him, her voice eerily calm. I know everything. Go take care of Miss Jiang. Sebastian watched her unnaturally composed face, an inexplicable surge of intense unease rising in his chest. In the past, Kimberly would get jealous at the slightest closeness between him and other women, requiring him to coax her for a long time before she'd calm down. Though he found it exasperating back then, he would always patiently reassure her, given my status, there will always be people shamelessly clinging to me, but you're the only one in my eyes, don't be jealous for no reason, and she would nestle in his arms, mumbling softly, I get jealous because I love you. The day I stop feeling jealous is when you should really worry. Thinking of this, Sebastian felt a sudden inexplicable unease rise in his heart. He wanted to say more, but the Olivia in his arms groaned uncomfortably, rubbing her temples. Sebastian, my head hurts so much. Sebastian looked at the fragile and helpless Olivia in his arms, then at the indifferent-faced Kimberly before him. In the end, his concern for Olivia won out. Pursing his lips, he said to Kimberly, Olivia isn't feeling well, I'll take her to rest first. Can you get back on your own? Without even waiting for her reply, he carried Olivia and brushed past her, hurrying away. Kimberly stood rooted to the spot, the night wind chilling her to the bone. She had no idea how long she'd been standing there, until the sharp pain in her heart gradually numbed. Only then did she slowly turn around and walk away, step by step, from this suffocating place. She had just stepped through the hotel's gilded doors and reached the roadside, not yet able to take a deep breath of the frigid night air, when suddenly, terrified screams erupted from above. Someone jumped off the building. Kimberly instinctively looked up, only to see a dark shadow rapidly enlarging, hurtling straight toward her. Bang! A tremendous impact struck from above, and excruciating pain instantly flooded every nerve ending in her body. She didn't even have time to make a sound before darkness swallowed her vision, and she completely lost consciousness. Regaining consciousness again, I was awakened by the blinding surgical lights and excruciating pain throughout my body. She found herself lying on the operating table, surrounded by doctors and nurses dressed in green surgical gowns. The patients awake, still conscious, a doctor shouted before leaning over and speaking rapidly to her. Ms. Kimberly, you were hit by a falling object from height, suffering skull fracture and intracranial hemorrhage. We must perform emergency craniotomy immediately. The risks are high. We need family consent. Quickly notify your relatives. Family. Kimberly struggled to move her eyeballs, her vision blurred. Her right hand was still mobile, but covered in sticky blood. With all her remaining strength, she tremblingly groped for the phone placed on a nearby tray, its screen already stained red with blood. Relying on memory and blurred vision, she dialed the pinned number at the top of her contacts. The phone rang for a long time before being answered. From the other end came Sebastian's voice, tinged with a hint of impatience and the weariness of being disturbed. Hello, Kimberly, what now? Didn't I tell you to go back by yourself, Sebastian? Her voice was so faint it was almost inaudible. I'm at the hospital, surgery, need a signature. There was a brief silence on the other end, followed by his impatient sigh. Kimberly, stop messing around. You're the one who asked me to take care of Olivia. Now you're calling me back like this. Don't you see how contradictory that is? Her heart sank abruptly. Before she could explain, a nearby doctor, unable to stand by any longer, snatched the phone and said sternly, Sir, we're doctors from the emergency department of City Hospital No. 1. Kimberly's condition is critical. She has a traumatic brain injury and needs immediate surgery. You must come and sign the consent form right away." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, followed by Sebastian's even more impatient voice. "You're putting on an act and even found an accomplice. Kimberly, I really don't have time to play these childish games with you right now." At that moment, Olivia's faint, delicate voice could be heard in the background. "Sebastian, what's wrong? Did something happen to Kimberly? Shouldn't you go check?" Sebastian immediately softened his tone in response. "No need. She's always used these tricks, faking illness or playing the victim. Whenever I interacted with other women, she'd throw tantrums to drag me back. This is just the same old act. You're feeling unwell from drinking too much and shouldn't be left alone. I need to stay here and take care of you." Without waiting for the doctor to speak again, the call was abruptly ended. The icy busy tone was like a sharp knife, completely piercing Kimberly's last faint glimmer of hope. Overwhelming grief and despair washed over her, yet she didn't even have the strength to cry. With great difficulty, she turned her gaze to the doctor, her voice barely audible. "Doctor, if there's no family member to sign, can I sign it myself?" The chief surgeon looked at this blood-covered, dying girl who had been treated so cruelly by her lover, his eyes filled with compassion. He remained silent for a few seconds before nodding heavily. "All right, we'll operate on you. You sign it." The nurse handed the surgical risk consent form and pen to her trembling, blood-stained hand. With the last ounce of her strength, she scrawled her name crookedly, Kimberly. Every stroke of the pen felt like personally burying all the love and youth she had invested over these 5 years. The doctor took the consent form, his voice heavy. "Young lady, a boyfriend who doesn't show up at your life or death moment, you can do without him." Kimberly, her unfocused gaze fixed on the blinding light above as the corners of her mouth slowly twisted into a smile uglier than tears, whispering in a nearly inaudible voice, "Thank you, doctor. I never intended to keep him." The anesthetic was injected into her vein, the icy liquid rapidly spreading throughout her body. In the last second before consciousness sank into darkness, countless images flashed through her mind. The heart-fluttering moment when she first met him, the passion of his pursuit, the sweet indulgence after they got together, him celebrating her birthday, cooking for her, carrying her on his back through long streets in the rain. So these 5 years of memories she treasured like jewels. All of it couldn't compare to Olivia making just one appearance before him. A single icy tear silently slid from the corner of her eye, disappearing into her hairline. Kimberly struggled awake from her dazed state, and the first thing she saw was Sebastian sitting by the hospital bed, his brows tightly furrowed. Seeing her open her eyes, he immediately leaned forward, his gaze still carrying traces of lingering shock and unmistakable guilt, his voice much lower and hoarser than usual. "Kimberly, you're awake. I'm sorry. I truly didn't think that phone call was real. Nor did I expect you to be this badly hurt. I thought, I wish it were fake too." Kimberly interrupted him, her voice weak yet carrying a chilling calmness. "That way, I wouldn't have heard those words you said." Sebastian slightly changed his expression, as if pricked by her bluntness. He pressed his fingers to his temples, attempting to explain with a tone of habitual appeasement, as if she were merely being petulant. "Kimberly, at that time Olivia was drunk and frightened. She was terrified and couldn't be left alone. When you suddenly called saying you were injured, naturally I thought you were just jealous and trying to send me away. I promise, it won't happen again. I'll believe you from now on." "All right, a promise. From now on." Kimberly felt as if her heart was soaking in ice water, each contraction bringing waves of tight, aching pain. She closed her eyes and whispered softly, "There won't be a next time." "What did you say?" Sebastian didn't catch it, or perhaps, he never expected her to say such words. Kimberly shook her head and fell silent. All her strength seemed to have been drained by the surgery and those words she had just spoken. In the following days, Sebastian stayed at the hospital to care for her, though it felt more like fulfilling an obligation. His body was in the ward, but his mind was clearly wandering elsewhere. Until that afternoon, Olivia appeared gracefully at the ward door, carrying a fruit basket. "Sebastian, Kimberly, am I interrupting?" Her voice was gentle, carrying just the right amount of apology. Sebastian practically leapt from his chair, his face lighting up with a smile Kimberly hadn't seen in ages. "Olivia, what brings you here? You should be resting. You're not fully recovered yet." "I'm fine now. I heard Kimberly was injured and wanted to check in," Olivia said with a smile as she entered. For Kimberly, the next few hours felt nothing short of excruciating. Sebastian had all his attention focused on Olivia. He meticulously peeled an apple for her, cut it into small pieces, stuck toothpicks in them, and placed them in her hand. He chatted with her about amusing stories from her years abroad, his laughter carrying a lightness and joy she had never heard before. He even noticed Olivia subconsciously rubbing her arms and immediately stood up. turning off the hospital room's air conditioning without hesitation. It was midsummer. And the moment the air conditioning was turned off, stifling heat instantly engulfed the hospital room. Kimberly, the severe wound on her back, was soon soaked with sweat, stinging sharply like needle pricks, unbearably sticky. She could even feel warm liquid slowly seeping out. Staining her hospital gown red, with great difficulty, she moved her lips, wanting to say something, only to realize the two were chatting happily, completely oblivious to her discomfort. She felt like a transparent, superfluous ornament. Several hours passed. Olivia finally rose to take her leave. Sebastian instinctively moved to escort her downstairs. "No need to see me out, Sebastian." Olivia considerately stopped him, her gaze sweeping over the pale-faced Kimberly in the hospital bed. "You should focus on taking care of Kimberly." Sebastian halted then, but his eyes followed Olivia's retreating figure until it disappeared around the corridor's end before reluctantly withdrawing his gaze. Just at that moment, the nurse came in to change Kimberly's dressing. As she lifted the hospital gown, the nurse gasped sharply, "Good heavens, what happened? How did the wound get so severely infected? It's even bleeding." She felt the stifling heat in the room and exclaimed in surprise, "Why was the air conditioning turned off? In such hot weather, keeping the wound covered is most likely to cause infection." Sebastian heard this and suddenly turned to look at Kimberly. When he saw the bloodstains seeping through the gauze on her back and her pallid face, a flash of shock and panic crossed his face. "Kimberly, why didn't you say anything?" Kimberly slowly raised her eyes to look at him, her lips curling into a faint yet profoundly bitter smile of self-mockery. "I did say something. But did you hear me?" She paused, her voice light as a feather yet striking Sebastian's heart with crushing weight. "Weren't you more concerned about her not being able to stand the wind?" Sebastian stood frozen in place, his face alternating between ashen and pale. He opened his mouth as if to argue, but ultimately just turned around immediately to switch on the air conditioner, his tone strained. "Sorry, Olivia almost drowned once and has a cold constitution. The slightest draft gives her headaches or makes her sick. I just momentarily, for a moment, I forgot you're still injured, and wounds are prone to inflammation too." The words that followed stuck in his throat, impossible to voice. Kimberly closed her eyes, refusing to look at him any longer. 10 years have passed. He could still remember Olivia's minor quirks so clearly and care for them so meticulously. Then what had these 5 years meant to her? Just a temporary save file that could be overwritten at any moment. At that very moment, sudden commotion and cries erupted outside the hospital room. Sebastian frowned displeasedly and said to the bodyguard at the door, "Go see what's going on. Tell them to keep quiet and not disturb Kimberly's rest." The bodyguard promptly went out. Within minutes, the bodyguard rushed back in panic. "Mr. Sebastian, it's terrible, Miss Jiang." Miss Jiang was accidentally injured by medical protesters downstairs. She was stabbed multiple times and is now bleeding heavily. She's being resuscitated in the emergency room. "What?" Sebastian's expression changed drastically as he abruptly stood up. He didn't even have time to glance at Kimberly before rushing out of the ward like a gust of wind. Kimberly's heart sank heavily in response. Gritting her teeth against the excruciating pain in her back, she struggled to get out of bed, wanting to follow and see what was happening. By the time she painstakingly made it to the emergency room doors, she saw doctors anxiously explaining that Olivia had the rare panda blood type, Rh-null, and the blood bank was critically low, with emergency supplies being rushed from surrounding areas. Sebastian immediately rolled up his sleeve upon hearing this. "Take mine, I'm Rh-negative blood type. Take as much as you need, just save her." Kimberly leaned against the cold wall, watching helplessly as crimson blood flowed from Sebastian's veins, slowly transfusing into Olivia's body. Her heart felt as if it were being repeatedly stabbed by that same knife, the pain numbing her completely. Sebastian had lost so much blood that his face turned noticeably pale, yet he paid no heed, pacing anxiously outside the emergency room, refusing to rest. Just then, family members passed by the other end of the corridor, their idle chatter faintly audible. "That Ling Mountain temple outside the city is said to be quite miraculous. My mother-in-law kowtowed every 3 steps while climbing all 999 steps to beg for prayer beads blessed by the abbot for my comatose son. He woke up that very night." Kimberly instinctively glanced at Sebastian. Sure enough, his eyes suddenly lit up, and without hesitation, he turned and dashed straight out of the hospital. Kimberly's heart sank completely. She returned to the hospital room and numbly opened her phone. The first push notification from a local livestream read, "Shocking, Dwight Family Group's CEO devoutly kneels for love, prostrating every 3 steps to beg for the sacred Buddhist beads of Ling Mountain." In the livestream, Sebastian's expensive suit was covered in dust, his forehead bruised and even bleeding, yet he climbed the endless stone steps with unwavering determination. kowtowing at every step. The comment section was boiling with excitement. "Oh my God, it's Sebastian. He actually went this far for his girlfriend. So touching. I heard his girlfriend has been with him for many years, and their relationship has always been great. Now that's true love. I'm so jealous." Kimberly looked at those comments, feeling as if an invisible hand were gripping her heart tightly, the pain suffocating. He had indeed followed her for several years, but this time, what he was kneeling and begging for wasn't for her, his girlfriend of several years, but for that unforgettable, unattainable white moonlight. For the next few days, Sebastian did not appear again. Kimberly learned from the nurse's chatter that after retrieving the prayer beads, despite his weak condition and forehead injury, he stayed by Olivia's bedside day and night, personally caring for her. She opened her social media feed, and the first post that refreshed was from Olivia. The photo showed a string of dark prayer beads, captioned, "Surviving the ordeal. I'm grateful for everything. Special thanks to someone's prostration with every step. This gesture means more than gold." The next moment, she saw Sebastian's avatar appear in the likes list. At that moment, Kimberly felt her heart ache so intensely she could barely breathe, her hands trembling. She turned off her phone, and suddenly the whole world seemed to fall silent, yet her chest remained a desolate, icy void. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Sebastian drove over to pick up Kimberly. Gazing at her pale face, he said softly, "You've lost too much weight, and Olivia hasn't had much appetite lately either. Let me take you both out for a good meal today. You need to regain your strength." Kimberly sat silently in the backseat, watching the streetscapes recede rapidly outside the window. Olivia sat in the passenger seat, chatting cheerfully with Sebastian about recent amusing incidents. Kimberly felt dazed, realizing she was the superfluous outsider. At the restaurant, Sebastian attended to Olivia with meticulous care throughout. He patiently peeled shrimp for her, arranging the peeled shrimp neatly on her plate. From time to time, he refilled her water and gently wiped away sauce stains from the corners of her mouth with a napkin. The young couple at the next table cast envious glances, and the girl whispered to her boyfriend, "Look at how good that boyfriend is to his girlfriend." Sebastian and Olivia exchanged a glance, neither speaking up to deny it. Kimberly's heart ached as if pricked by needles. She could no longer sit still and stood up, saying, "I need to go to the restroom." In the restroom, she splashed cold water on her face repeatedly, trying to calm herself down. Just then, the piercing sound of the fire alarm suddenly blared, and thick smoke quickly filled the air. Kimberly rushed out in panic, wanting to warn Sebastian and Olivia, yet when she ran back to her seat, she found it already empty. He had long taken her away, without even remembering her. Kimberly gave a bitter smile and fled the fire alone. Just as she reached safety, she saw Sebastian in the distance, anxiously checking if Olivia was injured. Olivia shook her head. "I'm fine. Kimberly is still inside. Go check on her quickly." Sebastian only then remembered Kimberly. Just as he turned around, he saw her standing not far away. He hurried over and asked with concern, "Kimberly, are you all right?" Kimberly looked at him, her heart filled with sorrow. If not for Olivia reminding him, would he have completely forgotten her existence? "I'm fine," she heard her own voice, eerily calm. Sebastian seemed to relax slightly before saying, "Olivia had quite a shock. I need to take her home. We're not going the same way. Could you take a taxi back yourself?" Without waiting for her reply, he turned and ushered Olivia away. Kimberly stood rooted to the spot, watching the familiar black Maybach disappear in a cloud of dust. During rush hour, compounded by the recent fire, it was impossible to hail a cab. To make matters worse, rain began to fall from the sky. Left with no choice, she dragged her still unhealed body through the icy downpour, step by painful step. 3 hours later, she finally returned home, her feet covered in blisters, her entire body soaked through. Utterly disheveled, she silently tended to her wounds, took a hot shower, and wearily collapsed into bed. Late at night, Sebastian finally returned, carrying faint traces of alcohol and the scent of Olivia's signature perfume. He lifted the covers and slipped in, instinctively reaching to embrace her. To kiss her, Kimberly broke free, her voice weary. "Let's just forget it until you've figured things out." Sebastian paused mid-motion, stunned. "Kimberly, are you still upset about not calling you during today's fire? Or because I didn't drive you home?" He tried to pull her back, his tone like soothing a petulant child. "Don't be like this. All these years we've been together, you're the only one in my heart. There's never been anyone else." Kimberly's heart felt as if pierced by those words. No one else. Then what does Olivia count for? The one who made him break his rule of peeling shrimp, who made him lose his composure, who made him donate blood and kneel to beg for prayer beads. What does she count for? Yes, all these years he's only had her by his side, and never once mentioned Olivia. But the moment Olivia appeared, he became a completely different person. And this, more than anything, proves that Olivia is hidden in the most precious depths of his heart. He never mentioned it, yet he never forgot. Suppressing the pain in her heart, she turned her back to him and responded perfunctorily, "I know, let's sleep." Sebastian looked at her indifferent back and could only sigh in the end, wrapping his arms around her from behind without further movement. The next day, as if to make amends, Sebastian proposed taking Kimberly to see the meteor shower. "You've always wanted to see it, haven't you? Since you're on vacation now, let's go together." His tone was gentle, as if last night's unpleasantness had never happened. Kimberly wanted to say no, but he half coaxed, half pushed her into the car. Halfway through the drive, Sebastian's phone rang. It was Olivia calling, her voice brimming with excitement and anticipation. "Sebastian, I heard there's a Leonid meteor shower tonight. We missed it back in high school. We absolutely have to go watch it from the mountaintop together." Sebastian instinctively glanced at Kimberly in the passenger seat. Kimberly simply turned her head to gaze out the window, her expression unreadable. He hesitated for a moment before speaking gently into the phone. "Sure, but Kimberly and I are already on our way there. Since you want to go too, we can all go together." Kimberly's heart twisted violently, the pain nearly making her double over. He always did this, effortlessly turning her into that superfluous option that needed to be accommodated. The car detoured to pick up Olivia. As soon as she got in the car, she kept apologizing. "Kimberly, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you two had plans today. I just got back to the country, and Sebastian is my only close friend, so I thought of asking him to." Kimberly didn't say a word, only nodding faintly. Upon reaching the foot of the mountain, as the car couldn't go further, the three had to hike up a stretch of mountain path on foot. Sebastian carefully looked after Olivia the entire way, sometimes supporting her arm, other times reminding her to watch her step. During the journey, Olivia accidentally twisted her ankle, the pain bringing tears to her eyes. Sebastian immediately crouched down without hesitation, hoisted her onto his back, and carried her step by step toward the mountaintop. Kimberly followed behind them. Watching Sebastian's broad back with a heart turned to ice, he had carried her like that too, when she was too exhausted to climb further, but now, someone else rested upon his back. By the time they reached the mountaintop, night had already fallen. The meteor shower arrived as scheduled, brilliantly streaking across the night sky. Olivia excitedly shouted her wish, "I want to become the nation's most outstanding chief reporter." Then she asked with a smile, Sebastian, what did you wish for?" Sebastian gazed at her tenderly, a smile playing at his lips. "If you say your wish out loud, it won't come true." Kimberly tilted her head slightly toward him, knowing his wish must be related to Olivia. "Kimberly, what about you? What did you wish for?" Olivia asked again. Kimberly gazed at the night sky where the meteor had vanished and whispered, "My wish won't come true if I say it out loud." Her wish was, "May I never see Sebastian again in this lifetime." After watching the meteor shower, the three prepared to descend the mountain. The mountain path was steep, and Olivia lost her footing momentarily, screaming as she tumbled down the slope. In her panic, she instinctively grabbed Kimberly's wrist, pulling her down as well. The two tumbled heavily down the hillside. Kimberly felt a sharp pain as warmth spread across her leg, clearly bleeding. Fortunately, the slope wasn't too steep. Sebastian soon frantically scrambled down after them. "Olivia, Kimberly, are you all right?" Olivia sobbed pitifully. "Sebastian, my foot hurts so much, I think I can't move it." Kimberly tried to speak but found even breathing brought a tearing pain. Her injuries were clearly more severe. Sebastian assessed the situation with a furrowed brow before finally making his decision. He scooped up the sobbing Olivia and said urgently to Kimberly, "Kimberly, hold on. Olivia's foot is injured. I'll get her to safety first and send help immediately. Stay right here and don't move." With that, he carried Olivia and soon vanished into the dark woods. Kimberly lay at the foot of the cold hillside, staring at the direction where they had disappeared. The pain in her heart far surpassed the wounds on her body. She waited and waited, from nightfall until the sky paled with dawn. The dew soaked through her clothes, and the cold combined with blood loss gradually clouded her consciousness. He never came back. Despair washed over her like a tidal wave. She knew that if she didn't save herself now, she might truly die here. Summoning the last ounce of her strength, she dragged her agonizing body inch by excruciating inch up the slope. Every movement felt like death by 1,000 cuts. Blood soaked through her clothes and stained the earth beneath her. At last, she climbed onto the highway and, mustering her final strength, waved at the occasional passing vehicles. "Help!" Finally, a car stopped. She saw someone running toward her, and her anxious heart finally settled as darkness engulfed her vision. She completely lost consciousness. When she woke again, she found herself lying in a hospital bed. Sebastian kept vigil by the bedside, his eyes bloodshot, face etched with familiar guilt and anxiety. Seeing her open her eyes, he immediately grasped her hand, his voice hoarse. "Kimberly. You're awake, I'm sorry." Olivia was terrified of the pain. She kept crying during the 4-drip and absolutely needed someone by her side. "I didn't mean to leave you alone for so long. I came back to look for you later, but you were already gone." He began explaining again, making promises again. "I swear, I'll never leave you alone again, never." Kimberly gazed at him quietly, her eyes no longer holding the love and radiance of the past, only endless exhaustion and a desolate emptiness. She no longer believed. The day she was discharged from the hospital happened to be the 5th anniversary of their relationship. Sebastian took her home. When he opened the door, the house was meticulously decorated, candlelight flickered, roses covered the dining table, and an exquisite cake sat at the center. He seemed genuinely remorseful and wanted to make amends, hoping to properly celebrate this anniversary with her. He lit the candles and whispered softly, "Kimberly, make a wish." She gazed at the flickering candlelight, yet her heart remained still as stagnant water, no longer stirred by even the faintest ripple. She had no wishes left to make for him, nor any hopes for a future tied to him, so she simply closed her eyes and gently blew out the candle. Sebastian didn't notice her indifference. Just as he was about to cut the cake, his phone rang again. It was Olivia. Whatever was said on the other end of the call made him hesitate. He looked at her and opened his mouth, but couldn't find the words to speak. Kimberly spoke first, her voice eerily calm, almost indifferent. "Go ahead." He froze. "Actually," Kimberly looked at him with hollow eyes, "spending more time with her will do you good, help you figure out who you truly love." Sebastian's face instantly flooded with gratitude and relief. He grasped her hand. "Kimberly, thank you for understanding. Olivia has been emotionally unstable lately and really depends on me. I'll go stay with her these few days and return once she's better." He pressed a grateful kiss to her forehead, then grabbed his coat and hurried out of the house. The moment the door closed, Kimberly's calm facade finally shattered, revealing a flash of deep pain before settling back into numbness. Not long after he left, she received a call from the visa center informing her that her visa had been approved. She murmured her thanks, hung up the phone, walked into the bedroom, and pulled out the already packed suitcase from the depths of the wardrobe. She had lived in this home for 5 years, yet all traces of her could fit into just one suitcase. Taking one last look around, she felt no attachment whatsoever. Zipping up her luggage, she left resolutely. A few days later, Sebastian returned with the limited edition necklace he bought for Kimberly and a bouquet of tulips, her once favorite flowers, hoping to cheer her up. When he pushed open the door, the house was eerily quiet and empty. "Kimberly," he called out, but there was no response. A sudden panic gripped his heart as he rushed into the bedroom. The wardrobe stood wide open, all her clothes gone. The dressing table was bare, every trace of her existence wiped clean. The room was so clean it was as if she had never been there. He stood frozen in place, his mind blank, frantically pulling out his phone to call her. "Sorry, the number you dialed is busy." He refused to believe it. Redialing again and again, only to hear repeatedly, "Sorry, the number you dialed is busy. Sorry, the number you dialed is busy." She blocked him. Sebastian's face instantly turned ashen. He abruptly raised his hand, almost hurling his phone away with force, but in the end, that pitiful shred of reason made him stop. Instead, he began frantically calling everyone who might know her whereabouts. The first call went to her closest girlfriend. The phone rang for a long time before being answered. The line filled with noise as if the caller was outside. "Hello, Mr. Sebastian." Her best friend's voice sounded slightly surprised, even carrying a hint of barely detectable tension. "Where is Kimberly?" Sebastian skipped all pleasantries, his tone icy and demanding, carrying an interrogative edge that brooked no argument. Kimberly, I don't know, she didn't tell me." Her friend's voice clearly betrayed guilt. Stammering nervously, "You don't know." Sebastian's anger intensified, his voice suddenly rising with terrifying pressure. "She didn't even tell you. You'd better tell me the truth, Mr. Sebastian. I really don't know. Maybe she suddenly disappeared because she needed you to give her some space." Space. Sebastian sounded as if he'd heard the most ridiculous joke, his tone mocking and icy. "I'll ask one last time, where is she?" The other end of the line fell silent for a few seconds, followed by a faint sigh, then the dial tone after the call disconnected. Beep, beep, beep. Sebastian stared at the disconnected call, absolutely furious. How dare she hang up on him? Even the people around her dared to treat him this way. He proceeded to call several of Kimberly's colleagues, only to receive either vague responses like "not really sure" or polite yet distant replies. "Mr. Sebastian, this is MS, Kimberly's private matter. We shouldn't interfere." This all-encompassing concealment and rejection poured like gasoline onto the fire raging in his heart. She had actually conspired with everyone to keep him in the dark, playing him for a fool. What the hell was she trying to do? Investigate. Get me answers now. He slammed the speed dial button, practically roaring at his assistant on the other end of the line, his voice slightly distorted and trembling with sheer fury and an undetected undercurrent of panic. Mobilize all resources. 1 hour. I'll give you 1 hour at most. I want to know exactly where she went. Now, immediately. Right this instant. Dwight's family, their vast corporate network, typically employed for business intelligence gathering and crisis management, now operated with ruthless efficiency to track down a single runaway woman. Every passing minute and second of waiting made Sebastian like a caged beast, pacing restlessly across the spacious living room. His expensive custom-made leather shoes struck the polished floor with dull, hurried thuds, each step echoing through the suffocating space. In less than half an hour, the phone rang. He answered almost instantly, his voice tense. Speak. The assistant on the other end of the line clearly sensed his boss's explosive mood, responding with unprecedented caution and hesitant disbelief. Mr. Sebastian, we've found out, MS, Kimberly her, visa type shows, it's a war correspondent visa. What? Sebastian sprang up from the couch, veins bulging at his temples. A war correspondent? Has she lost her mind? Is she throwing her life away just to spite me? After the initial shock came overwhelming rage and a deep sense of humiliation from being severely provoked. In his view, this wasn't about pursuing ideals at all. This was Kimberly throwing the most extreme, reckless tantrum imaginable. She was threatening and punishing him with her own life, trying to force him to yield, to compromise. Prepare the plane immediately. Without a moment's hesitation, he barked the order into the phone, each word dripping with ice. Let's see how long her willfulness lasts. This is sheer lawlessness. Snatching his car keys and jacket, he stormed out the door in long, furious strides. All along the way, his mind was brewing with towering rage and thoughts of how to teach a lesson to this disobedient woman who disregarded safety and caused him enormous trouble. His motive was simple and brutal: go to that damned, dangerous place and drag her back. As for salvaging their love, he never once thought it needed salvaging. He believed she had simply gone too far in her tantrum, and that his mere presence, removing her from danger, would set everything right again. After a long flight and a series of tedious, even slightly dangerous clearance procedures, Sebastian's private jet finally landed. The moment he set foot on this land, the dry air thick with the mingled scent of gunpowder and dust, along with the distant, indistinct sounds that could either be celebratory gunfire or conflict, made the man accustomed to first-class cabins and five-star hotels frown in extreme discomfort. He instinctively tugged at his suit collar, as if it could shield him from the unsettling atmosphere. The temporary news station in the war zone was set up in a building that appeared relatively sturdy, though bullet marks still scarred its walls. People clad in bulletproof vests hurried in and out, their faces weary but their eyes sharp with intensity. Sebastian spotted Kimberly almost instantly among the bustling crowd of journalists and staff, all clad in identical bulletproof vests, their skin tones a mosaic of diversity. She stood before a makeshift wooden table draped with an oversized regional map, her fingers darting across its surface as she engaged in rapid-fire discussion with several foreign colleagues. Their conversation oscillated between heated debate and emphatic nods. Her surveillance headphones hung loosely around her neck, the sharp lines of her profile tense with concentration as her gaze remained fixed on the map. That expression of single-minded focus and purpose was one Sebastian had never witnessed on her face before. She had grown noticeably thinner, the soft roundness of her cheeks had hollowed, revealing a defined, almost sharp jawline. Chronic sleep deprivation painted dark crescents beneath her eyes, while sun and wind had roughened her complexion. Yet her eyes burned with an intensity that startled Sebastian, a fierce, unfamiliar light that somehow hurt to look at. It was a radiance blended with a sense of responsibility, professional conviction, and independent resilience. She was no longer that delicate greenhouse flower who needed his meticulous care, who would pout and seek help over trivial matters, who was fragile and afraid of pain. This realization pierced Sebastian like a red-hot needle, striking unexpectedly and sharply into his heart, bringing with it a sharp, unfamiliar sting of pain and panic that inexplicably tightened his chest, making him miss half a breath. But he quickly suppressed that strange feeling, as anger and the thought of dragging her back took the upper hand. He strode over, ignoring the astonished gazes around him, and grabbed Kimberly's arm. His habitual command slipped out with undeniable dominance. "Kimberly, look at the state you're in. Come back with me this instant." He expected her to compromise without hesitation, as she always had before, and follow him the moment he appeared. However, Kimberly's reaction completely defied his expectations. She first winced in pain, then calmly, even with a hint of disgust, forcefully shook off his hand. She raised her head, her gaze icy and distant, as if looking at a complete stranger, her tone flat and unemotional. "Mr. Sebastian, please behave yourself. This is a work area. And I'm working. Do you need something, Mr. Sebastian?" That form of address was like a bucket of ice water, drenching Sebastian from head to toe, leaving him momentarily stunned. Sebastian was nailed to the spot by her sudden rejection and the icy 3 words "Mr. Sebastian," hardly believing his ears. "What did you call me?" he repeated, his voice rising slightly with shock and anger, carrying an offended sharpness. "Kimberly, have you had enough of this nonsense?" He took a step forward, his tall figure casting a shadow that nearly engulfed her completely, trying to intimidate her with his usual domineering presence. "5 years. We've been together for 5 years, and you just throw it all away, over this petty issue, just because I've been taking care of Olivia a bit more lately. Is this your way of extreme revenge, coming to this godforsaken place to punish yourself? Do you even know how dangerous it is here?" His voice grew louder, drawing the attention of several foreign colleagues who paused their work and frowned in their direction, their eyes filled with clear disapproval and wariness. Some people even instinctively stepped forward slightly, subtly positioning themselves to shield Kimberly a little behind them. Kimberly wasn't intimidated by his fury. She didn't even glance at the colleagues trying to protect her, merely lifting her chin slightly to calmly meet his anger-flushed eyes. After listening to his lengthy tirade of accusations, her expression remained completely blank, save for the faintest, most imperceptible smile. The smile held no warmth, only a sarcasm soaked through with exhaustion and worldly wisdom, which inexplicably pricked at Sebastian's heart. "Sebastian." Her voice remained steady, yet cold as a surgical knife, beginning to dissect the truth layer by layer. "Between us, was it really just because you paid a little extra attention to Olivia?" She tilted her head slightly, her gaze carrying an almost cruel calmness. "Shall I help you recall, incident by incident, detail by detail?" Without waiting for his reply, she continued speaking, her pace unhurried yet each word crystal clear, crashing through the silent air and landing on Sebastian's increasingly rigid face. "When the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling window shattered, sending glass flying everywhere, who was it that you instinctively leaped over me to protect? Shielding them tightly in your arms, in the hospital room, who was it that merely whispered they were afraid of the draft, making you turn off the air conditioning without hesitation, leaving my stitched-up wound to fester, swell, and bleed in the stifling heat, the pain keeping me awake all night? On the terrace at the celebration banquet, for whom did you throw all dignity aside and brawl like a madman, then scoop someone up in your arms and walk right past me? As I lay on the operating table, with doctors searching in vain for a family member to sign the surgical consent form when they called you, in whose hospital room were you sitting, dismissing it all as me being dramatic and making trouble? Who was it that sprained their ankle while watching the meteor shower on the mountaintop, making you immediately carry her down the mountain, while leaving me, who had been dragged down the slope, with a deep gash on my leg from a rock, bleeding non-stop alone in the wilderness for an entire night? And what about our 5th anniversary? The candles on the cake had just been blown out when you got a call from who knows who, and you immediately stood up and left without hesitation, abandoning me. Before you left, you even had the nerve to say, "Thanks for understanding." She listed each incident one by one, calmly, without hysteria or tearful complaints, just stating the facts. It was as if she were recounting someone else's story, yet every detail was like an ice-cold engraving knife, precisely peeling away Sebastian the self-deceptive shell around his heart, exposing the bloody truth beneath. Sebastian was left speechless by her question, the color drained from his face. The initial anger replaced by an unexpected panic. He opened his mouth, but his throat seemed tightly constricted, unable to form complete words. He wanted to explain, to say it's not like that. To say I was just, but those pale excuses seemed so ridiculous and feeble under her calm gaze. I was just, he struggled to form words, his mind in complete disarray. "You just instinctively chose her." Kimberly cut short his futile struggle, her eyes devoid of any emotion, only a lifeless understanding. "Every single time, without exception, in your heart, her slightest discomfort outweighs my most urgent matters." She looked at him, her gaze as clear and cold as a mountain stream, reflecting his current wretchedness and pallor. "Sebastian, you see, you're not torn between me and Olivia." She paused, enunciating each word deliberately. Though her voice wasn't loud, it carried the weight of a final judgment, sealing his guilt. "From the very beginning, you chose her without hesitation. Now, I've helped confirm your choice." She turned slightly aside, making a pleased gesture with an air of detachment and finality. "So take your confirmation and leave my world. Don't disturb my work again, and don't interfere with my life." Having spoken, she didn't spare him another glance, as if he were nothing more than insignificant air, she turned back to her discussion with colleagues, tapping a coordinate on the map with her finger while speaking rapidly in fluent English, her tone focused and professional. The storm that had just upended his entire world seemed, to her, no more than brushing off a speck of dust. Sebastian stood completely frozen in place. The foreign colleagues around them also averted their gazes, returning to their own tasks, no longer paying attention to this suddenly intruding and clearly unwelcome stranger. The air was left with only their hushed whispers about work and the distant, muffled sounds that reminded people of where they were. He watched her calm and detached profile, listening to her effortlessly conversing with others, when an unprecedented, icy panic, like the mud in a swamp, slowly crept up from his feet and drowned his heart. For the first time, he felt so acutely that the course of events had completely and utterly derailed from his control. She wasn't just furious and speaking in sarcasm, was she really abandoning him? This thought pierced his nervous system like an icy needle, striking without warning and sending a sudden panic through his heart. A powerful sense of loss and helplessness, almost overwhelming, seized him. No. Impossible, she must still be angry. Yes, that had to be it. She just needed time to cool off. He can't just leave like this. If he leaves now, it's truly over. Almost instinctively, Sebastian stayed. With staggering financial resources and connections, he obsessively forced himself to remain in this godforsaken place he found repulsive, filthy, and dangerous to his core. He gave himself a noble-sounding excuse to protect her. Thus, amidst this war-torn land, there emerged an utterly incongruous and unsettling sight. Kimberly and her colleagues' interview convoy weaved through the ruins, always trailed at a distance by several expensive, gleaming black SUVs that clung like unshakable phantoms. He tried to insert himself into her life and work. Like an awkward and unwelcome intruder, the elite security team he sent was politely declined. The expensive supplies he brought, fresh fruits and vegetables, purified water, even desserts from her favorite bakery, stood in jarring contrast to the local scarcity, appearing both ridiculous and ironic. He even attempted to forcibly join her reporting assignments, succeeding only in provoking deeper revulsion and tighter defensive measures from her colleagues. He was like an unwelcome shadow, stubbornly looming over her yet utterly unable to blend into her world. It was precisely in this suffocating following that he was forced, for the first time, to watch up close how she worked and lived. He saw how she calmly raised her camera during brief lulls in gunfire to document scenes amidst the ruins, how she struggled to communicate with panicked locals in their unfamiliar language, her eyes filled with genuine compassion and respect. How she unhesitatingly shared a piece of dry bread and drank from the same bottle of water with colleagues and even locals amid extreme scarcity. How she ventured into dangerous frontlines just to obtain the most authentic first-hand news. Without him, she not only lived well but even radiated a kind of vitality he had never seen before, more dazzling, more resilient, more moving. It was a strength rooted in suffering yet growing toward the light. Far more awe-inspiring than flowers meticulously nurtured in a greenhouse. This realization, like countless tiny ants, began gnawing at his heart day and night, bringing an unfamiliar, slow, and persistent ache. What followed was a deeper, almost overwhelming panic. The foundational belief he had always held firm, "She needs me," was now being shaken and dismantled inch by inch, mercilessly, by the ironclad facts before his eyes. On this day, Kimberly and her team decided to venture into the heart of a conflict zone for an interview. The situation there was like a string stretched to its limit. The air thick with gunpowder and an unsettling silence. Sebastian's convoy still trailed behind like an inescapable shadow, keeping its distance. Sitting in the armored car, he gazed impatiently at the devastated scenery outside, filled with disdain for the dangerous environment and anger at Kimberly's recklessness. He could only think that she was dancing on the edge of a knife, purely to spite him. Suddenly, without warning, a violent explosion erupted nearby. Immediately after, the sound of rapid gunfire crackled like popping beans. The firefight had escalated. "Take cover, find cover now," the experienced security team leader roared into the walkie-talkie. The scene instantly descended into utter chaos. Screams, cries, the whizzing of bullets, and the sound of crumbling building debris all mingled together. Sebastian's heart clenched violently, his gaze locked onto that slender figure in a bulletproof vest ahead. Kimberly. Amidst the turmoil, he saw Kimberly not seeking cover for herself, but suddenly lunging toward a terrified local boy standing frozen and crying in the middle of the road. Almost at the same moment, with a muffled thud, Sebastian saw it clearly. Kimberly's shoulder jerked violently. A blinding crimson instantly bloomed across her dust-gray bulletproof vest, rapidly spreading. The bullet's impact sent her staggering backward, and she fell along with the child into a pile of broken wall debris, instantly buried beneath dust and debris, vanishing from sight. Kimberly, Sebastian felt his brain explode with a deafening boom, as if all sound in the world had been sucked away. Every drop of blood surged violently to his head, his vision even blacking out for an instant. All his rage, schemes, resentment, pride, were utterly shattered in that moment. Only the most primitive, most savage fear remained. Like a giant icy hand, it clenched his heart so tightly he could barely breathe. He didn't even realize when he threw open the car door and rushed out, "Mr. Sebastian, come back, it's dangerous." The bodyguard's shouts and the whizzing of bullets grew distant and muffled behind him. He could hear nothing, see nothing. His eyes were fixed solely on the direction where Kimberly had fallen. He charged toward the ruins like a beast utterly enraged and stripped of all reason. Stray bullets whizzed past his ears and body, sending up splinters of stone that tore through his expensive suit and lacerated his cheeks and arms. The pain burned fiercely, yet he seemed completely numb to it. "Kimberly, Kimberly, answer me," he roared, his voice cracking and distorted by sheer terror. Frantic, he clawed at the shattered bricks and twisted steel bars with his bare hands. His fingers were soon cut open, bleeding profusely, yet he felt no pain. At last, he saw her. Her face was as pale as paper, smeared with dust and blood, her eyes tightly shut, the bloodstains on her bulletproof vest a horrifying sight. In that moment, Sebastian's heart ached as if gripped and twisted by a giant hand, almost bursting. "Hold on, Kimberly, I'll get you out, I'm here." His voice trembled violently, almost incoherent. He carefully moved the rubble pressing on her leg, mustering all his strength to lift her into his arms, shielding her with his entire back and the back of his head as if he could block all deadly dangers for her. He held her tightly, stumbling backward through the hail of bullets. Each step felt like walking on knife blades. Suddenly, a searing pain shot through his left calf. He groaned, his knee buckling as he nearly collapsed. A stray bullet had struck his leg. He glanced down, blood was gushing from the wound, rapidly staining his pant leg crimson, but he only clenched his teeth, veins bulging on his forehead, took a deep breath, and tightened his grip around the person in his arms, dragging his injured leg. He didn't pause for a second, charging backward like a madman. He had only one thought: he couldn't stop. He absolutely couldn't stop. He had to get her to safety. It wasn't until he had safely put her into the Red Cross ambulance that had arrived to meet them, and watched the door close, that he felt all his strength drain away. He stumbled, leaning against the ambulance door, breathing heavily, his face ashen. Outside the operating room, time passed with agonizing slowness. His leg had only received simple hemostasis and bandaging. The bullet was still inside, and every movement brought a tearing pain, but he paid it no mind. He stood like a statue, staring fixedly at the tightly closed operating room door, his eyes hollow and filled with terror. His mind uncontrollably replayed the scene of her being shot and collapsing, her clothes stained red with blood. Each repetition sent a chilling fear through his body, leaving him trembling uncontrollably, in the face of such overwhelming fear and the threat of loss. The pitiful remnants of his arrogance and self-importance were utterly shattered. At this moment, he realized with absolute clarity and certainty, he couldn't lose Kimberly. Absolutely not. Yet this life-or-death realization, forced upon him in the moment, was quickly reinterpreted and digested by his deeply ingrained, twisted thought patterns. As his panic subsided slightly, he leaned against the cold wall, looking at his own disheveled, blood-stained appearance, when an absurd, almost grateful thought slowly rose in his mind. "See, Kimberly, you'd be dead without me. Do you see that? You can't survive without my protection, your so-called independence, your ideals. This godforsaken place you insisted on coming to, it almost cost you your life. You're just being willful, reckless, playing with your life as if it's a joke to me." He saw this instinct-driven, near-desperate rescue as a powerful, irrefutable proof of love and the ultimate bargaining chip to make her change her mind. He even began mentally preparing his arguments, ready to educate and convince her once she woke up, to make her face reality and obediently return with him. A few days later, Kimberly finally stabilized and woke up from her coma. Sebastian immediately limped over on his injured leg, practically throwing himself to her bedside, his face filled with post-crisis relief and an unconscious, almost eager-for-praise expectation. He grabbed her uninjured hand urgently. "Kimberly, you're awake. You scared me to death. Do you know that?" His voice choked with emotion. Thank goodness I got there in time. See how dangerous it was. Without me, you really would've." He paused, trying to make his tone sound more reasoned, more like stating facts rather than accusations. "This place is too dangerous. It's simply not where you should be. Stop being willful. Once you're better, we'll return home immediately, and never again." His words came to an abrupt halt, because he saw Kimberly slowly turn her head to look at him. In her eyes, there was none of the post-crisis dependence, gratitude, or even fear he had anticipated. There was only a cold, almost indifferent calm, and a clear, polite detachment, like looking at a stranger, who had risked their life to save you, someone who deserved a word of thanks, but still not someone you wished to be entangled with. Her chapped lips moved slightly, and though her voice was weak, it cut through with unmistakable clarity as she interrupted him. "Thank you, Mr. Sebastian, for saving my life." Her gaze swept over her heavily bandaged shoulder, then fell upon his equally bandaged leg, still oozing blood, as she continued in that same unruffled tone, "For the medical expenses you've advanced this time, along with all other losses incurred due to this accident, please have your assistant prepare a detailed list for me." She paused before adding, "After I return to my country, I'll find a way to repay you in full." Sebastian was utterly dumbfounded. It felt like having a bucket of ice water poured violently over his head, instantly freezing his entire body, or like being struck square in the face with a sledgehammer, leaving him dizzy and disoriented, his ears ringing as the whole world spun around him. "Thanks, pay me back." He had risked his life, with a bullet still lodged in his leg, nearly dying there, and all he got in return was a polite thanks and the cold, meticulously clear demand to pay me back. The anticipated emotions, tenderness, reconciliation, dependence. Even her finally realizing her mistake and compromising, none of it happened. The immense disparity and incomprehensible reality pierced his chaotic mind like an icy awl. For the first time, he began to vaguely realize with such clarity that things might truly not be as simple as he thought, just throwing a tantrum or acting out. It seemed she really intended to sever all ties with him. Even the debt of saving her life was to be measured and severed with money, an unprecedented, overwhelming panic and intense bewilderment, like deep-sea kelp, coiled around his heart, nearly suffocating him. Yet the arrogance and self-assurance forged through years of wielding power and control acted like a suit of impenetrable armor, shielding his fragile core, making him unwilling, even afraid, to probe the true source of this terror. Almost instinctively, he defaulted to the explanation that best fit his mental framework: he simply hadn't done enough. It must be Olivia's lingering presence, still a venomous thorn lodged in Kimberly's heart, preventing her from returning to him. Once he completely eliminates this obstacle and proves to her that she's the only one in his heart, all problems will be resolved. Yes, it must be so. Kimberly insisted on returning home despite his strong objections. After her condition stabilized, Sebastian followed closely behind like a persistent shadow, dragging his not yet fully healed leg. He seemed to have fallen into an obsessive madness, vowing not to stop until he achieved his goal. After returning home, he launched an even more high-profile, relentless, and self-righteous reconciliation campaign. Every single day without fail, he sent people to deliver expensive luxury goods, rare jewelry, keys to top-tier sports cars. He even rented all the massive billboards in the core commercial districts and transportation hubs of City Z. Running a week-long rotation of carefully crafted confessions: "Kimberly, I love you, come back." Sebastian's only love in this life is Kimberly. He frequently appeared outside the TV station building and her newly rented apartment complex, attempting to intercept her and forcibly talk things out. He was always accompanied by bodyguards and assistants, creating such a spectacle that passers-by couldn't help but stare. While tabloids splashed the story across their front pages for days, everything he did was less about winning Kimberly back and more like a grandiose performance of self-indulgent martyrdom staged for his own benefit. He was proving to everyone that Sebastian had already lowered his head, had already condescended to fight for reconciliation, so Kimberly shouldn't be so ungrateful or push her luck. Yet, Kimberly's responses landed like successive, stinging slaps across his face. Every gift was returned unopened, addressed to MS. Kimberly rather than MS. Kimberly. Those expensive billboards were only up for one day before being completely replaced the next day with public service announcements and commercial ads, demonstrating astonishing efficiency. Rumors suggest Kimberly personally negotiated with the station's leadership, even paying the breach of contract penalty herself, demonstrating unwavering resolve. The most striking part was how she even issued a brief but firm official statement through the television station's official channels, prominently displayed on both the station's website and partner media outlets. "I, Kimberly, have long since ended my romantic relationship with Mr. Sebastian, currently focused on career development. I request privacy regarding personal matters and decline any irrelevant interviews or attention. Thank you for your concern." The statement, like a cold scalpel, precisely severed all possibilities of ambiguity and entanglement he had tried to create, defining his behavior as harassment and unwanted attention. Each rejection added another layer to Sebastian's rage and frustration. He felt his dignity being ground into the dirt. In his fury, he once again wrongly blamed everything on that root of all evil. It must be Olivia. Her presence still loomed like an insurmountable chasm between him and Kimberly. As long as he completely removed this obstacle and proved to Kimberly that there was no one else in his heart, she would surely change her mind. Thus, without hesitation, he resorted to ruthless measures and began coldly and efficiently dealing with Olivia. Sebastian dealt with Olivia swiftly, precisely, and ruthlessly, with an air of unquestionable coldness. It cost him almost no effort. Olivia's seemingly impressive resume and social connections crumbled like paper against the Dwight family's vast intelligence network and financial power. A few phone calls, some perfectly timed anonymous leaks, sudden withdrawals and betrayals from key partners. In just days, Olivia, the once celebrated chief reporter who had soared to the top upon arrival, was thoroughly disgraced throughout City Z's media circles and social scene. She was portrayed as a scheming woman who climbed the social ladder through ambiguous relationships, even going so far as to meddle in others' affairs. Her less-than-glorious past was dredged up and sensationalized. No one dared to employ her anymore, and no circle would accept her. In the end, amidst a storm of scorn and ridicule, she could only pack her bags in disgrace and flee abroad, vanishing completely. After completing all this, Sebastian sat in his spacious yet cold office. Looking at the final report delivered by his assistant, his heart remained largely unmoved, instead swelling with a sense of satisfaction akin to cleaning house and a faint anticipation, as if he had accomplished some great feat. "See, the obstacle has been cleared. I've gone this far for you." He almost couldn't wait to find Kimberly. This time he deliberately avoided settings that might provoke her resistance, instead choosing to intercept her in a relatively natural way at the lounge area of an industry dinner. Looking at her, his tone carried an eagerness and relief he himself hadn't noticed, almost like seeking credit. "Kimberly," he lowered his voice, trying to sound sincere, "you see, I've taken care of Olivia completely. All her belongings have been returned. She's gone, never coming back, never appearing between us again to upset you or remain as your unresolved issue." He paused, carefully observing her expression as if waiting for her to show relief or the slightest hint of softening. "Now, you should be at ease, shouldn't you?" His subtext was almost glaringly obvious. "See, I've gone this far for you, cleared all obstacles. Shouldn't you be satisfied now? Shouldn't you come back?" Kimberly didn't respond immediately after hearing his words. She looked at him quietly for a few seconds, her gaze so calm it inexplicably sent a chill down Sebastian's spine. Suddenly, she let out a very soft laugh. There wasn't a trace of emotion or joy in that smile. Instead, it was filled with an indescribable, suffusing sense of absurdity and sorrow, as if she just heard the most ridiculous story imaginable. "Sebastian," she shook her head, her voice laced with an all-pervading weariness, and even a hint of pity. "You never understood, from start to finish, where the real problem lay." Sebastian's hopeful expression froze instantly. There was never any Olivia obstacle. Her voice was clear and calm, like a scalpel precisely dissecting all his self-deceptive defenses. "From beginning to end, the problem has always been you." She watched his face darken abruptly, enunciating each word with deliberate emphasis. "And your fundamental inability to understand love." Having spoken, she refused to look at his expression, shifting through shock, disbelief, then rapidly transforming into fury and incredulity as if another glance would be wasted. She turned away decisively, leaving behind a resolute and icy silhouette that vanished into the perfumed crowd of the banquet hall. Sebastian stood completely frozen in place. A buzzing filled his ears as her final words echoed relentlessly in his mind. The problem lay with him. He doesn't understand. He doesn't love her. Absurd, utterly ridiculous. He's done so much for her. He even took a bullet for her, nearly lost his life there. Now he's cleared all obstacles and troubles for her. When has Sebastian ever gone to such lengths for anyone? What more does she want? What else does she want from him? A surge of immense rage, resentment, and the humiliating sting of complete rejection instantly consumed him. Blood roared violently to his head. How dare she say that? How dare she dismiss everything about him? "Kimberly, you can only be mine." This obsessive thought raged wildly in his mind, nearly shattering the bars of reason. "I'll never let go, never." However, his nearly out-of-control frenzy didn't last long. His public spectacle over an ex-girlfriend, even mobilizing corporate resources to settle personal grudges, had severely angered the elders within the Dwight family. A family meeting with an atmosphere so tense it could drip water was convened in the study of the Dwight family ancestral home, a room symbolizing absolute authority. "Sebastian, your recent behavior has been utterly disgraceful, Mr. Dwight said with a face as dark as storm clouds. his sandalwood cane striking the floor with a heavy, dull thud that carried undeniable authority, making such a public scene over a woman, drawing everyone's attention. What kind of conduct is this? The group's reputation and stock price will suffer. Marriage alliance. Sebastian arched an icy, bone-chilling smile as if hearing the most absurd joke, his hawk-like gaze sweeping fearlessly across every elder attempting to dictate his life. Impossible. He abruptly rose to his full height, his towering frame radiating overwhelming pressure, the air around him thick with terrifying intensity. Each word he spoke was razor-sharp, more like an obsessive, near-mad declaration. I, Sebastian, will marry none but Kimberly. Except for her, I want no one else. His gaze swept over the shocked and angry faces of the crowd, his tone resolute, leaving no room for negotiation. No one else shall have me, nor will I ever take another. This matter is not open for discussion. He even went so far as to wield his absolute controlling stake, suppressing all opposition with an almost dictatorial force. Yet, beneath this seemingly deep as the ocean and no one but you declaration, its core was not entirely rooted in profound love and respect. It was more of a morbid, unquestionable possessiveness and paranoia at work. She is mine. This thought swirled like the most vicious curse in his mind, eroding his reason. Mine alone. I haven't let go, no one can take her away, and I'll never allow myself to belong to anyone else. He stubbornly believed that as long as he refused to let go, as long as he removed all so-called obstacles like arranged marriages and proved his determination to everyone, Kimberly would eventually see his goodness, would turn back, and everything would return to the starting point under his control. Yet reality dealt him the heaviest blow precisely when he was most confident, just as he was busy dealing with internal family pressures, believing he had cleared all external obstacles for her. News about Kimberly once again reached him through special channels. The message was brief, yet every word cut like a knife. She had accepted an invitation from an international news organization, completely transferring away from domestic assignments to permanently reside in an overseas region plagued by frequent conflicts, harsher conditions, and near isolation, serving as their chief war correspondent. Her return date was uncertain, or perhaps, she might never come back. Subsequently, reports about her began appearing frequently during prime time slots on internationally authoritative media outlets like BBC and CNN. Sebastian could only catch glimpses of her, coldly, distantly, through various news channels he once disdained. She stood before the bombed-out ruins, conducting live broadcasts with steady composure, her gaze as firm and penetrating as a torchlight that seemed capable of piercing through screens. She ventured into the heart of war zones, interviewing people from all sides amid gunfire and artillery, delivering objective yet profound reports brimming with the power of humanistic concern. She stood on the podium of the International Journalism Awards, dressed in a sleek black gown, accepting the trophy that symbolized the highest honor in the industry. Radiant and composed, she delivered a speech about truth and peace. She was drifting further and further away from him, beyond his reach, until he could only gaze at her figure through a cold screen. Like the most ordinary spectator, the girl who once nestled in his arms, who would cry, laugh, and act coy, had vanished. In her place stood a remarkable woman, dazzling and rooted in a broader world, someone he no longer recognized. The sensation of her completely slipping from his control, no longer even needing his so-called world, felt like an invisible, icy hand finally clamping around his throat in that moment, filling him with an unprecedented, almost overwhelming panic and a suffocating void. She now possessed a stage entirely her own, one of grandeur and brilliance, and on that stage, from the very beginning, there had never been a place reserved for him. Driven by panic, he began frantically trying to re-establish a connection, even if it was entirely one-sided. He dialed every number she might know, only to be met with the icy unreachable tone or endless busy signals. He composed lengthy emails, shifting from accusations to pleas, but they sank like stones into the sea without a single ripple of response. He searched all her social media accounts, only to find they'd either long been abandoned or had completely blocked and blacklisted him. He spared no expense, escalating his efforts, buying access to every possible channel that might reach her, whether it was her foreign colleagues, assistants, or even the local security personnel she hired. The feedback she received was always the same, cold, formulaic, as if copied from the same template. MS. Kimberly is very busy. MS. Kimberly does not wish to be disturbed. Sorry, no comment. It was as if she had built an invisible yet insurmountable wall of the hardest steel and most resolute will between him and herself, completely and permanently shutting him out of her world. This absolute, gap-free rejection brought an unprecedented sense of overwhelming helplessness and panic that began gnawing at Sebastian day and night. He began suffering from severe insomnia, lying awake night after night in the cold, empty bedroom, staring at the ceiling while his mind replayed her resolute departure and those icy, distant eyes. Only by relying on copious amounts of strong alcohol, enough to numb his nerves, could he barely manage to slip into a fitful sleep. Yet even in those brief, alcohol-drenched dreams, all he saw was her walking away, over and over again, replaying endlessly. Each time he jolted awake, his body was drenched in cold sweat, his chest aching as if hollowed out. His temper grew increasingly irritable and volatile, with even the slightest trivial matter capable of setting him off. In the company, he became a mobile, highly unstable powder keg, with a sinister gaze and an icy, piercing tone that made all the executives and employees tremble with fear. Treading on thin ice, the entire Dwight family group's top floor was shrouded in an oppressive atmosphere. It felt as if the softest, warmest part of his heart had been ruthlessly hollowed out. That hollow, icy sense of loss grew clearer by the day, tormenting him until he could neither eat nor sleep, his entire being visibly withering away at an alarming rate. But he still stubbornly, almost obsessively, refused to admit that it was the loss of love. He forcibly attributed this heart-wrenching pain to intense discomfort from broken habits and anger over lost possessions. He had grown accustomed to her meticulous care in his life, to her always revolving around him and making him the center. To everything about her, now she suddenly withdrew without warning, not only living well but even thriving brilliantly in realms beyond his reach, which severely challenged his deeply ingrained sense of authority and control. He simply couldn't accept it, nor could he comprehend it. He just wanted back what originally belonged to him. He told himself this over and over, trying to numb his already panicked and aching heart with this twisted logic. A seemingly accidental opportunity finally arrived. Kimberly was invited to attend a prestigious International Journalism Awards ceremony in a major domestic city, honoring her outstanding contributions, extraordinary courage, and profound humanitarian care in war zone reporting. Sebastian pulled every possible string and exhausted all available means, sparing no cost, to obtain an exceptionally rare internal access pass. He even managed to bypass the tight security and infiltrate the backstage area. At the dimly lit end of a relatively quiet corridor connecting the main venue to the lounge, he finally intercepted the figure that had haunted his thoughts, tormented him endlessly, and nearly drained him of all strength these past days. Kimberly. His voice came out hoarse, terribly so, as if he hadn't spoken properly in ages, carrying an unconscious tremor and caution he himself hadn't noticed. Kimberly turned at the sound. She wore an exquisitely tailored, expensive custom gown in a deep ocean blue that accentuated her fair complexion. Her makeup was refined yet understated, her gaze bright and composed, exuding a calm confidence born of weathering storms. Seeing him appear so suddenly, a faint flicker of surprise crossed her face as if beholding a stranger who didn't belong, before swiftly settling into her usual polite yet distant expression. The Sebastian before her was nearly unrecognizable. The man who was once aloof, noble, cold, and proud, whose every strand of hair exuded precision and control, now appeared unusually haggard and disheveled. Dark circles under his eyes were too heavy to conceal, and even stubble had grown haphazardly on his chin. His expensive suit no longer sat crisp and tailored on his frame but instead looked crumpled, his tie loosened. All the pride and sharpness he once carried seemed to have been worn away by the torment of this time, leaving only a deep, bone-weary exhaustion and a desperate, almost despairing wretchedness. He looked at her, his gaze no longer holding the usual dominance, command, or entitlement. Instead, there was something unprecedented, something almost humble, pleading, and fragile. Kimberly. He struggled to speak again, each word seeming to be squeezed from a throat scraped raw by sandpaper, dry and painful. Those 5 years, the entire 5 years we were together, were they all a lie? Was there not even a shred of truth in them, not even a little, worth remembering to you? This was the first time he had completely shed all pretense, pride, and disguise before her, revealing the most raw, most bewildered truth within. Kimberly looked at him quietly, at this man she had once loved to the marrow of her bones, for whom she had given everything, but who now could no longer stir the slightest ripple in her heart. There was no hatred in her gaze, no resentment. Not even irony, only a calm and clarity born of weathering countless storms and seeing through the ways of the world, as if she were examining a past that had nothing to do with her. It's true, she spoke slowly, her voice steady as if narrating someone else's story, devoid of any emotional fluctuation. Every single thing you did for me during those 5 years, every kindness you showed me, the delicious food you took me to eat, the gifts you gave me, even those self-righteous acts of protection and care, they were all real. Sebastian instantly had a faint, almost pleading glimmer of hope ignite in his eyes. He took half a step forward eagerly, as if clutching at the last lifeline, but Kimberly's next words were like the sharpest awl, tempered in ice for millennia, precise, cruel, and utterly merciless, shattering every pitiful fantasy he had just begun to entertain. But, Sebastian, don't you understand now? Her gaze was clear as a mirror, reflecting his instantly frozen, pallid face. Those 5 years, you weren't loving me, you were loving through me, the shadow of Olivia, the one you couldn't obtain in your youth and could never forget. You projected onto me doubly everything you wanted to do for her but never had the chance. All the tenderness, patience, care, romance you failed to give, even that self-touching desire to give born of regret. And she paused slightly here. The corners of her lips lifting faintly, almost imperceptibly, in a curve that carried a trace of barely detectable self-mockery, was the fool who only realized, after being repeatedly slapped in the face by reality until the very last moment, that I was just a pitiful stand-in. Boom. These words, like the final gavel of judgment, carried the force of a thunderbolt, the power to destroy everything, and came crashing down on Sebastian's skull, instantly shattering all the shells of his self-deception, laying bare the truth he had been too afraid to face, desperately trying to conceal, now exposed in broad daylight, raw and bleeding. No, that's not how it was, he instinctively wanted to refute, to loudly deny, his lips trembling but unable to utter a single clear syllable. Yet those fragmented memories he had deliberately ignored and forcibly suppressed now surged uncontrollably into his mind, vividly, cruelly piecing themselves together. Why had he been so proactive, so eager in pursuing Kimberly when they first met? Was it because, from a certain angle or expression, she faintly resembled that unattainable figure buried deep in his memories? Why, despite disliking sweets, had he gone out of his way to buy desserts from a time-honored shop simply because he'd accidentally heard Olivia loved them in high school only to gift them to Kimberly? Was it Kimberly's smile that satisfied him at the time, or his own imagination of feeling some kind of regret? Why did he, despite being allergic to shrimp, unconsciously remember that she loved eating shrimp? And later, when Olivia appeared, why did he make an exception for her, enduring discomfort to peel shrimp for her? Was he thinking about the treatment Kimberly had never received? Or was it finally accomplishing this thing for the her in his memories? Why did he describe that unrequited love with such clarity, even with a trace of imperceptible melancholy, when Kimberly asked about his past romantic experiences, as if every detail was etched deeply in his heart? That wasn't honesty, it was repeatedly chewing over and reliving that regret by recounting it to his current partner. So, his self-righteous devotion. His inexplicable lingering attachment toward Olivia, so convincing it even fooled himself, and those subconscious acts of favoritism weren't some profound, unforgettable love at all. It was merely an obsessive fixation on youthful regret, a stubborn preoccupation with what was unattainable, forever haunted by the illusion of being unfinished. What he had truly grown accustomed to, relied upon, immersed himself in, and even unknowingly internalized to the point of becoming part of his very blood and bones, was the warmth, understanding, comfort, and those ordinary yet tangible moments of happiness that Kimberly, a real person, had brought him during those 5 years. He wasn't tormented by choosing between his idealized first love and his current girlfriend. He had long fallen in love with Kimberly, who had been by his side day and night, giving him genuine warmth, yet, like a complete fool, he remained blind to it. Instead, he used every foolish and cruel method to hurt her, push her away, all to mourn and cling to that long-faded, self-glorified youthful obsession. A massive, belated wave of remorse and panic, like the most violent tsunami, instantly engulfed him completely. It left his limbs ice-cold, his body trembling uncontrollably so violently that he could barely stand, futilely clutching the cold wall for support. No, it's not, Kimberly, it's not like this. He suddenly stepped forward, emotions spiraling out of control, desperately trying to grab her hand. His voice was filled with unprecedented, utter panic and despair, words tumbling out incoherently. I love you, I know it now clearly, unmistakably. It's you I love, it's always been you. There's no one else. I was stupid, blind, my heart was clouded by foolishness. Give me one more chance, just one, please. I'm begging you. His eyes were bloodshot, on the verge of kneeling, his posture humbled to the dust. Kimberly looked at his bloodshot eyes, at the genuine, immense pain and pleading in his gaze, yet felt not the slightest ripple in her heart, only the calm of settled dust. She gently, yet with unshakable firmness and an undeniable force, withdrew her hand, shaking her head, her tone still calm but carrying a resolute finality. She pronounced the ultimate verdict. Sebastian, your love has come too late. Moreover, after you repeatedly abandoned and hurt me for her sake and for your ridiculous obsession, such love has become far too cheap for me. I can't afford it, nor do I want it anymore." With that, she no longer looked at the instant despair and devastation on his face, as if his world had collapsed. Resolutely turning away, she walked with steady and determined steps toward the brilliantly lit, dazzling award stage that belonged to her. Never looking back, at the award ceremony, the spotlight shone like a resplendent galaxy. Kimberly held the weighty trophy symbolizing supreme honor. Her acceptance speech calm yet powerful under the global spotlight, her gaze swept across the distinguished guests below without lingering on any particular face, not even the man seated in the darkest corner. "I thank the organizing committee for this honor. This recognition isn't merely personal, but a tribute to all journalists who persist on the front lines of truth, undaunted by adversity. A past experience taught me profoundly that a woman's worth never depends on any relationship. Independent character, professional excellence, courage in hardship, and an unwavering commitment to speaking truth for the voiceless, these are the stars and oceans worth pursuing throughout our lives." Throughout her speech, she never once mentioned the man sitting in the shadows below. "I've bid a final farewell to your world. Mine has long been vast as the ocean and sky, with no remaining ties to you." Sebastian sat in the shadows of the most inconspicuous corner of the auditorium, watching her shine brilliantly atop the world, receiving applause and admiration from the crowd. As he listened to her calm yet resounding speech, each word feeling like a final farewell to him, he understood completely. Without any lingering hope, he had lost her forever, utterly and completely. Lost the girl who had once loved him with her entire sincere heart, only to be gradually destroyed and pushed away by his own hands, the girl who had ultimately grown into someone so dazzlingly radiant. The world before his eyes seemed to instantly lose all color and sound, leaving only an endless expanse of lifeless gray and icy cold that completely swallowed him whole. Several years later, on a late night, Sebastian stood alone before the floor-to-ceiling windows of an empty, cold penthouse that resembled an expensive showroom. Outside the window stretched the dazzling yet soulless city lights, countless glowing windows that held no warmth and couldn't penetrate the darkness within. The massive LCD screen was silently broadcasting an international news channel. On the screen, Kimberly appeared amidst scorched earth where the flames of war had just subsided, their embers still smoldering. Standing composedly before the ruins, she delivered her on-site report. Even without sound, one could sense the calm, strength, and a certain sorrow emanating through the screen. He held a glass of strong liquor in his hand, the amber liquid gently swirling within. Yet he hadn't taken a sip for a long time, his fingertips lifted unconsciously, tracing ever so lightly, over and over, across the cold, smooth screen, following the lines of her brows, the contours of her face, the curve of her lips. His eyes held despair so thick it threatened to drown him, and love. That love had come too late, too painfully, too hopelessly. After what felt like an eternity, he tilted his head back and downed the scalding liquor in one gulp. The fiery liquid burned his throat and stomach like flames, yet did nothing to fill the desolate, icy void and pain in his chest. Staring at the screen where the person he could never reach or reclaim remained, he murmured hoarsely, his voice broken like a dreamer's whisper, carrying eternal regret. "I seem to have just learned how to love, but you no longer need it." Outside the window, the dazzling yet cold lights silently illuminated his figure, forever frozen in regret and solitude. Long and silent,